Hello and welcome back to the ocean. I appreciate you joining me today. We're doing a kayak mission to Shoe Island, taking the pulse spear and harvesting fish in the most sustainable selective way possible, spearfishing. Spearfishing is easily, hands down, the most environmentally friendly way to catch fish. There is literally no bycatch, as well as the fact very little gear is lost in the process. If you look at something like line fishing, losing your rigs in the sea is commonplace. However, with spearfishing, you go out of your way to make sure no equipment is lost. This is one of the many reasons that you and I became absolutely head over heels in love with spearfishing. When freediving, it is very important that you give yourself enough surface time. A safe minimum is twice your bottom time. There are many dangers in spearfishing. One of the most significant is shallow water blackout. This can be partly prevented by giving yourself enough time on the surface and not pushing your limits too far. Be aware of your diving ability and dive well within that range, especially when you're by yourself. If something goes wrong, no one is there to help you. People die spearfishing. It is a risky sport. However, there are many things you can do to reduce the probability of it being you. It is always a tragedy and you never want to be on the receiving end of bad luck, bad timing and being in the wrong place. Diving off a kayak is a great intermediary form between diving off a boat and shore diving. It provides access to areas that you wouldn't be able to swim all the way out to. However, you still have a lot of maneuverability. One of the biggest issues you may run into diving off a kayak is space. There's not a lot of space on a kayak, so you need to have your gear quite streamlined to be able to dive off a kayak effectively. Looking for fish oftentimes involves looking for good structure. I knew there was a large cave here, so I took a dive down to see what would come in. Silver drummer are quite large reef fish. They prefer living in areas with a lot of boulders, caves, areas they can hide inside. In New Zealand, you're not going to find many large fish living in caves with the exception of silver drummers. I only recall a single instance of me shooting a silver drummer, and it was very early on in my spearfishing career. It dragged me around the reef and bent my shaft. These fish are surprisingly powerful. They have a lot of fight to them, very thick fish with a hell of a lot of guts. I decided to try and land one of the smaller sized silver drummers here, revisiting it for old time's sake and seeing if it cuts it as a table fish. Fortunately for me and my pulse spear, I managed to hit this fish in the spinal cord, severing it entirely, meaning this fish had very little fight in it. Whilst you will often find silver drummers living in caves, I would advise you avoid shooting them in caves at all costs. They are big fish and you don't want your spear gun getting dragged around the walls of a cave, getting all banged up. In my opinion, what people would regard to be table fish and non-table fish is often very nonsensical, as there are many great fish available in the ocean that don't commonly make it to the plate and aren't appreciated by a lot of people. A very good example of this is leather jackets. Reapproaching the same cave from the opposite side, I met with a spectacular view, looking through and out towards the other opening. As I'm looking at this other entrance, large groups of fish start congregating their way towards me. Most notably are these blue mau here. Blue mau are found almost exclusively in large groups, where they'll be doing one of two things usually. Either out in open water feeding in high current areas, or in a low current area in shallow just hanging out, as they are here. As well as beautiful, blue mau are also extremely tasty. If you're gonna shoot a fish in a cave, make sure that it's something small, something that you can overpower that dive and bring to the surface with you before it drags your spear gun and all your gear into the rocks and ruins it. Imagine for a moment that that blue mau was actually a kingfish. Without a perfect stone shot, you'd be completely fucked. Using a pole spear is the best way to add an extra level of challenge to spearfishing. Fish that are traditionally quite easy to shoot become a lot more challenging when you're using a pole spear. This butterfish for example. I tried to track the pole spear and take a shot, however I was not positioned right and it did not go my way. Using a pole spear over a traditional spear gun requires quite a lot of adaptation to your technique, especially when you're using a 9-footer like I am here. I take a shot at this butterfish, however my rigging line hit my leg, causing me to miss. I believe that there is a genuine overpopulation of leather jackets in the Coromandel. A lot of the ones you see will often have very serious skin infections as well, such as this one. I often take it upon myself when I see individuals such as this, put them out of their misery and remove them from the ocean. I would consider them to be genetic dead ends, as they have almost no possibility of reproducing and passing on their genetics. All the energy that goes to them is wasted, as they have great defensive mechanisms until the point where they just stop swimming and die. That's what they're gonna do. As the name would imply, leather jackets have a very thick, leathery outer layer of skin. As well as this, they have a spike on the top. They're a member of the triggerfish family. It is generally against my principles to mortally injure a fish and then not eat it. However, this is an exception. Much unlike the human world, in the ocean, nothing goes to waste. This leather jacket will certainly be eaten by something. Whether it's crabs, crayfish, starfish, or a shark, who knows. Every single organism in an ecosystem has a cost to maintain its life. All of the food, water, and oxygen consumed by this animal represents the cost. If an organism is consuming resources, has no prospects of breeding, passing on its genetics, and perpetuating the species, as well as being unobtainable to predators due to its defensive mechanisms, it is a net negative to the environment. When it comes to fish cleaning and preparation, if you can, it pays to do it while you're out on the water. It's a lot less messy doing it here than in your mum's kitchen or something. By first removing a fish's head, cutting up from the anal opening through the wings, you make removing the internal organs very easy as a result. While silver drummer are not a highly prized fish in the eyes of most spearfishermen, I was quite stoked with this one. It was my largest fish on the pole spear and gives me a lot of confidence to go after something a bit larger. Stay tuned for kingfish on the pole spear. I would like to thank you, personally, very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. This episode's sustainability message is take stewardship, take responsibility for your local area and look after it. If everyone did this, we'd be in a much better off place than we are now.